Well, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that thing.
No, calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
okay,
an
he's critic.
erratic
Mikhail
detective is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, girl, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. A pleasant Monday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show, as you can see on your screen, with co-host Leonard Craig. As you can see on the screen, on my left is one of Guyana's leading attorneys and one of Guyana's well-known parliamentarian. And as you would know, perhaps the fifth or the sixth appearance, and the election campaign is on, and we hope to have him back within the space of those 3 months, maybe more than once. You're looking at Sanjeev Datadin. I don't know if you will object if I say the famous Sanjeev Datadin. Anyway, he is famous. Prominent lawyer, prominent politician, but he also has a good analytical mind. And I forgot to mention, he is the chairman of the board of one of Guyana's key institution, the airport. But we'll talk about other things, and maybe Craig could bring in the airport. But let's start with our protocol of welcoming once again Sanjeev Datadin. Sanjeev, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Leonard Craig, I will leave Leonard to do the first question.
I want to go straight into, welcome, Council. I want to go straight into a topical matter, which is the election cases that are going on from the previous election. Can you give us an update? What is happening currently? What stage this case is at? And what essentially are these people before the courts for?
Good evening to all your viewers. Good evening, Freddie. Good evening, Leonard. Good evening, of course, to my family and my little son, who should be heading to bed now. My daughter is already asleep, I'm sure. But so these election cases are really for persons who have been charged with offenses under the legislation, the Representation of the People's Act. There are specific things that have to be done under the Representation of the People's Act, insofar as it goes to the counting, the declaring of results, and the acceptance of the counts that come in. The persons who are before the court is the former chief elections officer and other staff, and some of the persons are also politicians now in opposition. And the case essentially is that what was happening and what was being done by Mr. Mingo, I mean, in full view of the whole world, he was declaring numbers that came from spreadsheets and put up on bed sheets and had no basis to the actual SOPs. Very early in the day, the General Secretary, the now Vice President, Bharat Jagdeo, had set up a website and put all of the PPP SOPs and made them public. Why we thought they were doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. The whole world saw that. There were various statements from, I recall, Mr. Patterson said that, they had their SOPs.
That's David Patterson of the AFC.
Yes,
yeah.
of the AFC. And there were various persons saying they had these SOPs. It's been at least 5 years, or about 5 years.
More.
Nobody has shown them to us, or nobody has shown it to the public. Nobody has seen it. But still, there were these declarations made. So the issue is, where did the numbers on those spreadsheets come from? The only inference, the inescapable inference, is they were made up. They do not match the statement of polls. And then the statement of recounts, which came later when there was a recount of all the votes and it was publicly done. That too matched very closely the SOPs published by the PPP, but it doesn't match at all any of the numbers that those persons in GCOM sought to produce. So the offenses are essentially election offenses of interfering with the election, of declaring numbers that are not true, and essentially trying to steal an election. Those cases, as we have seen publicly, there are witnesses giving evidence about all of the things that have gone on. Now, the case is really a very narrow thing. I see in the press, as everyone else has, that there are all these questions about whether a police officer has said what has happened with his diary and if he still has his diary, all of these events that we go through. But I think Sonia, Minister Parag, has been very clear in what she had with her numbers and what would the numbers mean called from these spreadsheets. This is a very simple thing. A declaration was made based on certain numbers, and those numbers have proven to be false. That is an offense. Because as a public official, you are charged with the responsibility of not supporting one side or the other, of accepting the record that you have and producing it. Then we had the very imaginative thing, imaginative being used sarcastically by the then chief elections officer, where he wanted to decide whether a vote was valid or not. That was not his province. The court told him. The Caribbean Court of Justice was very clear. The count is the count. If you have that, he wants to say that when the ballot boxes were, he would decide whether these boxes would come or not. But given that, remember this, he made a declaration, the chief elections officer, based on numbers that he could not account for in Region 4 that were declared by Mingo. He didn't do it once, he did it twice. Now, if he was doing his verifications at that stage, would he not have seen from the SOPs in his possession versus the numbers that he have, that this returning officer has declared numbers that he don't know where they came from, and he should have stopped it? Then comes the statement of recount, done under the umbrella of CARICOM and the supervision of persons appointed by several heads of state in CARICOM who have declared these numbers, and he wants to now override that. And he declared one set of numbers where he discarded
115,000.
45 ballot boxes or something in that number. He just decided not to accept it, despite the CARICOM. And in the CARICOM report, it's clear they accept this to be genuine, they count. So he did that once, and he did it twice again. Again, where did it come from? He declared results that was so wildly at variance. He himself, so wildly at variance. At one time, the APNU had 36 or 35 or 36 seats. Another time they had 33 seats. Another time they had closer to 40 seats. This is one man from one election himself continuously declaring different numbers. It was lottery or bingo or something like that. He was playing a game. That is a criminal offense.
So I figure in this case you have to prove intent.
Well,
can somebody make a genuine mistake, give a wrong result off of a genuine mistake? How do you prove it is not a mistake and there was clear intent?
Well,
which I figure will have to happen.
Well, the intent part, I mean, every criminal offense requires mens rea, but these are different. They're known as strict offenses, strict liability offenses. So here what the simple thing is. If it's your task to tabulate, which is what the act says, you have to essentially add up the statement to polls. That's what the returning officer's job is. He don't do anything. He don't touch them. He don't decide if it's right or wrong. He adds up the numbers. It is a mechanical, mathematical process. And if I give you 2 plus 2 plus 2, and you say the answer is 12, I don't need to find intent. You're either a complete idiot, or you know deliberately what you have done. Now, in the case of the CEO, for example, when the first declaration was made based on Mingo's numbers, he must have had in his possession, forwarded to him on election night, the SOPs that reflected the numbers. The second one, he would have had those same things. And he should have said, how did you get this number? But even so, he should have obeyed what the law says. You have to do it from the SOPs. He should have obeyed what the judge said, the Chief Justice.
That he's not a lone ranger.
And you cannot take it, you cannot use the spreadsheets. So forget about even the numbers that are on those spreadsheets. The judge was very clear. The act says you have to have the SOPs, you have to show it to everyone, and then you have to, that's how the tabulation is entered. Now, anybody who goes into that system and deviates from all of these things, something is wrong. That, I mean, not that you need to go that far with the intent, but that is clear intent. Then again, you come to the other side. If you were in that position, wouldn't it trouble you that I declared number A today, and a week later I am declaring number B, and a month later I am declaring number C, D, E? Wouldn't you, as the person there, thinking, how is this thing changing all the time? It's not a game that you just pluck numbers and decide. And you got to wonder, why would any public official faced with that not say, listen, stop. Get the SOPs in the possession of GCOM. This is what the SOP says. Go to the returning officer and say, show me what you have. Because it doesn't match any number I have. So you have to be incredibly incompetent. And you have to have no concern or care for your job for you to repeatedly give numbers. If it was, for example, on day 1, you said number A. Day 2, you said number A. Same number, you keep insisting. Then it gives rise to different inferences. But you yourself are saying you were wrong the first time. And the third time you're saying you were wrong the second and first and second. The fourth time you're saying you're wrong the first, second, and third. What's going on?
All right. There was some amendments to the ROPA.
Yes.
Which separate Region 4 into 3. How does that help what happened in 2020 not to occur again?
Well, I think it's, unless I'm mistaken, into 4 areas, right? It's separated into the East Coast, North and South Georgetown, and the East Bank.
Oh.
So, but there's a whole, because the law that existed before was very good. But what we learned from 2020 is that that law could be interfered with. It could be cheated by persons who wanted to interfere because there was not enough accountability. Now, we have always had respect for the Chief Elections Officer and the staff of GCOM. We always thought they will do the right thing. They will do what they're supposed to do. They will follow their law and do their job. That didn't happen in 2020. So now what there is, one of the reasons to break the areas into 4, the main reason is so that the volume, while everybody is waiting on results, the volume is not so great. So last year, the East Bank was known and most of South Georgetown was known. North Georgetown was where the magic started, and the East Coast is where Houdini appeared. So that was where the problems started to occur. Now what happens? By law, GCOM is commanded to set up a website. GCOM is also commanded, as they receive SOPs, they must put the actual SOPs onto the website so that every citizen, everywhere, can see what they have published. Leonard, remember, the process is you counted the place of polls. Everyone who is in at the place of polls, everyone there gets a copy. It's an original copy. It's all one writing. It's signed by everyone. One copy is taken by each of the represented parties. One is, of course, the returning officer then sends to GCOM. One is posted outside, because that was a critical thing since the days of Dr. Jagan that he wanted. That it is posted outside so everybody in that district can go and look. It's usually the door. It was a lot of schools, and so you could look at the outside of the building and see an SOP there. Now, what is going to happen? GCOM has to have a website. When they receive it, they publish it. Everybody in that village, let's choose Mocha, for example. Everybody in Mocha can go to the polling place, see the polling number, whatever it is, 411, whatever it is, and see posted outside, these are the results. And look at the website and say, well, look, you know what? They match. So what GCOM has put up is what we have here. The political party representatives could say, look, I have 411, what GCOM has put it up, it matches what I have. If it doesn't, and you're a citizen, say, look, man, what's on this door and what he's saying there is not the same thing. Then you raise the alarm. And there's a process that happens with all of that. But you have to go through now what used to happen, one of the important things is it used to be GCOM would have all of it, and they will only report to you. We all remember Dr. Suraj Bali sitting and reading out Do Not Sing, district by district by district, and it never gets done. If you look back at all of that, they never finish. It's, for want of a better word, busy work, that people will see what's coming in, but then it all comes to a head. This now makes it compulsory for how an election will happen. And this now has the entire nation involved. And I will tell you that in my little experience in other jurisdictions, this country have people who are more au fait with election laws, especially after 2020, of rules and their rights, and what they can and cannot do.
Given all that you have just said, the polls close at 6. Would it not be fair to say, but 5 hours after, and I'm just saying 5, maybe you would want to put in a time limit here, shouldn't the political party know by midnight, or if you want to go over midnight, what they're standing?
You could know fairly quickly. The last time, I think the entire nation got the message when the vice president posted a picture the following day saying he was relaxing, having coffee. I think the whole nation understood at that time that he had known from what the PPP had received from all of their...
So we're not going to get September the 4th, says, nobody know yet to win.
No, but the law is only GCOM can declare, so nobody else can do that. So that's a good thing too. But what happens is, so what you're balancing is this. In and around Georgetown, for example, and the immediate environs, it's fairly easy that during the night, those SOPs and ballot boxes will be received by GCOM. But then you got to remember you got Region 7, Region 9, and all of those villages and all of the people in those villages are voting. So it takes a little longer for them to meet to the central places, and then they have to be transported to GCOM.
But GCOM wouldn't be seeing the statements of polls by electronic method?
Well, what they will get, what is going to happen, like GCOM still has to have the document come to them, right? They will see the electronics and they will have an idea. All of the political parties involved are going to be able to have, everybody's got a cell phone now, they'll take a picture and send it to their designated counting station, and it will be done there. So it'll be a lot faster because people can take actual pictures and send it. But you got to remember, GCOM will have to wait to get the paper. We all know that mischievous persons will want to interfere with
images.
With the images. But bear in mind, everyone in that room that is counting has to sign on that paper. So it's very easy because, in fact, when you look at the statement of polls that were published by the vice president, you saw on all of them they were representatives of APNU AFC signing along on them. It wouldn't have been possible that you would have been able to find all of their polling agents and give them something to sign, and they would have done it.
Can we move on to another issue you're involved in? You gave an interview with a man named Jones on the GRA case. Did you give a...
Cordell, yes.
I can't remember this one.
Yes.
What was that interview about? What did you say?
Well, what he was asking me about two things. Two things that I was doing that day. One is to do with the case of the Guyana Revenue Authority has filed criminal charges against Mr. Mohamed in relation to the declarations that go with a Lamborghini that he had brought into the country. So part of what I was explaining to him is that the charges are filed. The lawyers who were there were all up in arms that more than 6 months has passed, and under the Criminal Law Procedure Act 1002, with the things that relate to summary charges. So in Guyana, there are summary and there are indictable charges. So the summary charges have to be brought within 6 months, and indictable charges would be a longer period of time after the 6 month period. And they were going all up in arms, and another lawyer there, Mr. Wade, was the one making this objection, and there was another lawyer handing him a phone to say, this is the section that says the 6 months. So when he gave it to Mr. Wade, I was begging Mr. Wade, please read the whole section. And when he was looking at it, he was reading. I said, no, read the whole thing. And if you want, just so that you could look good with the crowd that's standing behind you, skip out the first 5 words at the beginning, because that don't suit you. Keep the part that you want, and then it will look good. But if you ever read the whole thing, you will realize that what you're saying is nonsense. Because it says, subject to any other law, right? And Mr. Mohamed is charged under the Customs Act. So it's not the Criminal Law Act that he's charged with. So it says subject to any other law. Very simply, it means what you're going to read thereafter. If it's contained in another law, this does not apply. So I kept telling him, you need to read the whole thing, and don't worry with the part that you don't like, because if you take that into consideration, the crowd standing behind you in the gallery are not going to be very impressed. So skip it so that you could please the crowd. But if you want to do the law, then read the whole thing and understand it. Because under the Customs Act, I think it is section 254, 7 years, the Revenue Authority has 7 years from any event. That is why you're advised by your accountants, etc., to keep records for 7 years. Because they can still go back 7 years to audit you, and you could be asked for the documents. So 7 years is what is required. Then, on top of that, the Customs Act says specifically that every offense under this act must be brought in the magistrate's court in a summary manner. And he's charged under section 217 and 218 of the act for making a false declaration to the Revenue Authority. You know that C form, the customs form you filled up? He filled that up incorrectly. And the second part is he provided a forged document as to the value or the value of the vehicle of what he did. So there are 2 offenses which carry varying levels of fines and jail time. But the point is, as far as the anybody has an interest in the whether you can bring it and how long you can bring it, would have hopefully have read the law. But the objection and the whole thing was really unbelievable. If you had bothered to read the law, it says 7 years and it has to be brought summarily in the magistrate's court. So there's a 7-year time limit.
You are a politician for the governing political party, the PPP. How do you feel that these matters surrounding the Mohammeds, or Team Mohammeds as they refer to themselves, will affect your party at the ballot box?
You see,
people are saying that it's political persecution.
Listen, every time you hear political persecution, whether it's in Guyana, Indonesia, India, wherever you want, the only way for you to discern that is whether the charge that is being brought is a real charge. I have a personal view. I've been a lawyer. It's the only thing that I have, or I feel comfortable with a skill of doing. And I will tell you this. Breaking the law, there is no immunity, whether you're the king or whether you're the papa. Whether people want to say that these are things of convenience, you can't stop people and their opinions and their perception. But I believe that if you have defrauded the revenue authority, notwithstanding who you are, you should be held accountable. And that should go for every criminal act. Now, we want to say that persons do it all the time. But we got to be adults enough to understand that not because you perceive it to be done all the time, that it should be done. In many cases, I know of many cases, some of which I have defended persons about valuations and what have been submitted. But you have to understand that in the process that there is, GRA became aware of what is going on because persons, Mr. Mohamed himself on Facebook was alleging what he actually paid for the vehicle. And it did not match what he told GRA. There were investigations, some of which I can't speak of because it relates to government communications about things. And information was obtained even from people in the public, people who had knowledge of what had happened. Then, so GRA's position is this. These are high-end vehicles, very unique vehicles. The records on them are very, very good. For the same reason that they can't be stolen and shipped around the world. That's the main thing. The second thing is the manufacturer wants to maintain a price and a value. They only produce a limited number every year. When you order one, you get a spot. And people would even sell that spot. Mm-hmm. Right? So these vehicles are unique in that way. They're not like Toyotas or the cars that I can afford, which are mass produced and they have 10 million of them a year. It's not like that. The records are very good. So the record says, the public record says what the value of this vehicle is. The manufacturer has insisted this is the value of the vehicle. $695,000. Now, then there are bank records from Mr. Mohamed that wires an identical sum to the person who he bought the vehicle from. And that person has an invoice that is in the identical sum. None of this had been known before. What were given were different invoices and different, but the 695,000 was, I don't want to say it, creatively would probably be the best word, in 3 portions, one of which was 75,300 that exactly match. So when was asked at that time, he said, look, this is the invoice for this amount. This is the bank transfer that matches this amount. He didn't say there were 3 other bank transfers that total a lot more money. And he didn't say that there was an invoice of that figure. Now, in the face of that, what is the revenue authority supposed to do? This is information that has also been, there's something called a mutual legal assistance treaty for money laundering purposes mainly. But requests were made of Guyana under that treaty to provide the Department of Justice with information. And Guyana made a request for information under that treaty, and it was provided to them too. So what are you supposed to do? In the scheme of things, these mutual legal assistance treaties are for governments to help, but then they would know what they have given you and you're doing nothing with it. What would be the inference about the system here? So it's a different case in many regards. Whether the timing is, what are you supposed to do? If now is when you have the information, and this information literally, in the High Court we made the application because we had just received the official documents by use of the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, like days before the hearing. What are you supposed to do then? Say, well, oh, you know what? We have an election and people are going to say, so let's do nothing? No state agency can do that.
Are you comfortable? If not, we move on because there's so many things one can discuss with you. Are you comfortable with discussing the RCMP gentleman's report into the Adrianna Young drowning, and B, the second postmortem results? Are you comfortable with discussing those areas? Or?
Of course. Look, like everybody else, I followed it. It's been, I have noticed that there's such a heavy investigation, if you want to put it, by people on Facebook who really don't know anything from anything. They're looking at videos and coming to conclusions. They're doing things that are really, they have no skill to do. And I don't either. And I think that in every situation when you would hear, I've been a lawyer for 27 years. I am well aware that you wait on the evidence and you bite your tongue about what you say. Because as the old saying goes, not that it applies to this, but truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. You weren't there and you don't know what happened. And you're trying to piece it together. By what? Your meandering experience through life? But what experience have you had in relation to criminal investigations? But I forgot. The answer to that is, I know. I look at it and I see this. I can't help anybody who wants to do that. And I can't help the litany of people who did that. What I have read, which is in the public domain, in relation to the first postmortem, I have to say that in my experience as an attorney, it was remarkably detailed and much more than would be the everyday postmortem. No offense to the good Dr. Singh, who does all of the postmortems here. But it was an over and beyond from what I saw. I thought it was a very, very detailed. The second postmortem, I only saw what was reported from the doctor. I haven't seen a document or a report of any kind. And that doctor said that it was also a very good postmortem and that the value of her postmortem had been deteriorated because of time, embalming, other things that happened. And she couldn't say anything. I think what was made into a big issue is she indicated that drowning was a exclusionary diagnosis, meaning you have to look at everything else. I can tell you that there are decided cases in law around the world that are a little different in that view, about whether it's an elimination diagnosis. And I say that to say this. In every scenario, in my reading of postmortem texts that relate to law, everything is an exclusionary diagnosis. Nearly everything. Every conclusion you come to is based on what you have and what you don't have. So if, for example, simple thing, a gunshot wound. If there is a gunshot wound to the individual and there is no other wound and it hit vital organs, you'll say gunshot wound. But if you only found the knife, you will tell yourself that perhaps the knife has no relevance to the death. But if I showed you a video and you saw a video that the man who has been shot had the knife in his hand and was running at another person, then you would think, oh, that might be self-defense. That's what your thinking would be. But that has nothing to do with the cause of death. So you've gone too far. You're running into avenues and considering things that are really about what courts, etc., are doing. It's exclusionary. The knife had no part to play in causing his death. The knife might have a part to play in a criminal case that is brought against the man, if indeed it was that he was running this man and this man shot him. Then it is. But in the cause of death, the knife has no part. Because what you're trying to find, what is the operative reason why this person is no longer alive? Did he have... So if you then have a gunshot wound in the leg, grazing blow, doesn't look, but then the man is also dead. And you're thinking, well, did he die from a gunshot wound? He might be a hemophiliac and he couldn't stop bleeding and he died. Then yeah, it's from the gunshot wound. He could have had a heart attack at the same time and he could have died. There are cases in all of the texts that go through this. Of course, they are exclusionary diagnoses because you take into consideration all that you have available to you versus what you have in front of you. Now, from what I've seen of the RCMP's report, he said that in relation to everyone and all the statements that they have and all the persons who have given statements and all the video that exists, there is no other, and he says he didn't think that it was in fact what we would term a homicide. Those are my words, those are not his words. But he's saying that it's not a criminal act, and going on with that. Now, I would only say this, in my experience, be very careful about coming to all kinds of conclusions, because if you want to convince yourself about something, you're going to believe it. This is how conspiracy theories are born. People will find enough questions to ask that are irrelevant, for which there is no answer, and that will be the key, they say. But these experts that have done the postmortem, I think they're really good. If you look at their paperwork and their experience, they're really experienced with what they've done, including the person who did the second one. And I think that drowning is what it is. And there is nothing to indicate anything other than that. And then it's how the drowning came about is the other part of the question, which is where the RCMP comes in. And he's saying that there is no evidence that there is what has happened.
But before Leonard comes in, it's easy, as you said, all we've been doing is reading, looking and listening to things said by the family, said by sympathizers of the family. But it's a different matter when you have a trained man, 30 years in one of the world's top police thing, when he sits on you sit across the table with him and he's asking you questions. Those people have the uncanny ability to get you to say things that you didn't say when you're speaking at a public meeting or you're speaking to a partisan journalist. And I would like to think that man would have interviewed family members. And
well, his report was based, as I understand it, on all the available information, videos, all of these things. And let me give you an example of what I mean about people saying things. I have always had a view personally, that in every dispute, as a lawyer, in every dispute I hear about, everybody's evidence, whether consciously or unconsciously, is tailored to the outcome that they favor. They might not realize that they're doing that. But nobody tells you a story without an objective. No one just, I don't think anybody tells the two of you when they sit here a story without an objective. Every sentence in English must have a focus. So everyone speaks with an objective in mind. Now take that to what we have seen here, where a lady who, I understand, just going by what's in the public domain, I think she is a nurse's aide or something like that. And she said she was at the postmortem and these were all the things that happened, and apparently she's been locked up for it. When she said she was present at the postmortem and these things were happening, that is commonplace. People will say things which they cannot back up. People say things all the time. I was always told by the late Justice Chang, to whom I owe so much, but he used to say to me, he says, Sanjeev, unless you lay eyes on it, do not believe. So if a man tells you that he has a statement from his father giving him property, or he got a deed giving him property, or he has a will that says A, B, and C, or he has a document, a contract that says X, Y, Z, he said, don't believe it until you lay eyes on it. Read it yourself, because you're going to get embarrassed. If a man tells you, lawyers speak to each other every day, and he will tell you, you know, this case says ABC, it will help you. Don't go and tell the judge the case says ABC until you find it yourself, read it, and find the part that says exact what you want. Chang used to say all the time, everything you said to Justice Chang, everything I said to him, he would say, let me read it. Let me see. Those were his favorite. Let me see. Show me where. That was his thing. When I was very lucky that he would take the time when I had criminal appeals, that at the time he was no longer, he was kind of retired before he became a Justice of Appeal. He had left DPP. He was not yet a Justice of Appeal. He was in practice. And that's when I would take a deposition and sit down with him. And he would say, what this one say? And I would say this. He said, show me the page. And then he would mark it up. Like if you ever lent him a book, when it came back, it was a different color. Every page. He would mark it and highlight. But he would always say, see that part. Don't take it for granted that it's there because somebody told you it's there. You'll get embarrassed more often than not. And it's the same way that I say about this. There are people who are saying all these things about whether a man pants is wet or whether the pants is not wet, and why he's standing here or why he's standing there, and who is this lady, why is she present everywhere. It has no bearing on anything, but people are taking their own meandering experience through life and applying it with some, yes, these are things that they have bothering them. But it's not relevant. It might not be relevant. And what has happened is there have been so many accusations made about all manner of people who were in videos about doing this and doing that. And I find that to be very, very wrong.
I have said on this program that what I find to be more wrong than, well, in this case, it might be difficult to judge what is more or less. But the sheer number of professionals whose whose long professional career have been sullied by coming onto this case or by agreeing to come on this case, starting from Darren Wade, the family doctor, the 3 experts that came in, police officers who witnessed the post-mortem. It's like people come here with their professional competence only to have it assaulted. And
Well,
that
I wish you had told me that before, because when Freddie come and asked me, I would have told him I don't want to answer. but I will tell you this. I don't know anything different rather than what I have seen in the public domain. And as I said, I thought what is reported in relation to the post-mortem was remarkable. It was very good. I have no reason to, because I have no skill in that area, to doubt what they have said about the causes, even the second post-mortem. I see the first and the second post-mortem to be entirely consistent with each other. And I think much play is being made because a snippet of a longer conversation for the second post-mortem was highlighted when she said she wouldn't be comfortable saying that it was drowned. But before that, she went through the whole thing that she had no other information and should be investigated. Well, it was investigated. I mean, the police, the Guyana police force, did themselves no favors by making a statement about the car taking the child somewhere and never quite giving the public the satisfaction of what it is.
One of the most crucial mistakes in
the general secretary said, show the video to everybody and let them see for themselves. But that has still not been done. So that has to do, that's at the doorstep of the police force. And that's at the doorstep probably of the, because of what happened, the commander and the commissioner. Because the commissioner is ultimately responsible. I'm not saying that anything here is, but as the saying goes, the buck stops at the very top. So there must be accountability for those things. But Freddie, you got to look at the realities of what happened. Yes, there are challenges with the Guyana police force. We know this. But it's not everything that is bad. And here is a man who, from his CV at least, appears to be very well qualified and very respected in his field, has said that he thought that the investigation was done properly, meaning all the relevant people were spoken to, statements were gotten from all the people, and as far as the post-mortem was gone, it was detailed. Now, if you put those things, two things together, you're going to find a conclusion which a trained investigator, a policeman, RCMP, or whatever he is, would do this. You keep calling that you want Scotland Yard or the FBI. Firstly, those organizations only work within the borders of their country. But let's say, for example, they agree and you ask them for help. Are you going to keep going until you find someone who will suit your opinion? This is not, you can't have an opinion about a fact. And you can't have an opinion if you don't have the knowledge, so that when you see the group of facts together, you could make a conclusion. The facts that we know are what's been shown to everybody. Now, if you don't have the skill, then how are you piecing it together? If you piece it together, then these facts would mean something to them because they have the experience in doing it. It's going to be, because of what happened on social media, very hard for the persons who believe that something happened in terms of a homicide. It's going to be very hard to persuade them that it's not. And for the persons who believe there was no homicide, it would be very hard for you to persuade them that there is. But as far as I'm concerned, the official reports of what has happened, and added to the statement made by the second postmortem, I think it's fairly consistent. And I don't think that it interferes with what is said.
I'd like to go back a little quickly to your parliamentary sojourn. In Parliament, because you're also a lawyer, and a good one at that. In Parliament, the Deputy Speaker, Ms. Asha Kissoon, to our view, has occupied that seat when she ought not to be there. And based on what was explained to me, there is a lacuna in the law, something in the law that...
I don't think it's a lacuna. I think it's fairly clear.
Well, or whatever. But when we started out with join the list, none of us imagined that or understood that. So...
the law was clear.
No. I'm getting to that. So the point is, there are two things at play. Society and a social contract, and then the legal thing. My question here, though, is the PPP is affected by what Mingo and others are accused of doing. And they changed the law so that it does not occur. Why not the same energy to change the law so that Asha Kissoon does not occur again? Or how do you respond to that?
So I only know, honestly, about what has gone on from what I see in the public domain. And I have had a conversation or two with Mr. Jonas, who is a fellow lawyer, and I think involved. So I don't think that there is a lacuna. That's my personal view.
Okay.
And I think it's a very, very clear solution that the people who entered into the joinder did not follow. And by entering into a joinder list, had they followed it, there would be absolutely no problems. There is no requirement that the law needs to be changed. Absolutely none.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't want to give legal... I'll tell you what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give legal advice and tell other people how to run their affairs. And maybe I shouldn't with this. But the solution is actually in the law.
Okay.
So this is what it is. The leader of the list will determine who goes into Parliament. The joinder did not realize that they should have all had one leader of the list. And this would never happen. What they did is they did a joinder where each person was the leader of the list. In fact, I don't want it to go out the saying, but in my humble opinion, that could not have happened.
So you think it's a procedural thing more than...
No, it's a legal thing. I don't think...
He's saying legally.
I don't think...
The joinder list should have...
I have a personal view.
A leader of the list.
I don't want to cast aspersions or create. But you asked me, and I'll give you my best. I have a view that there should not have been a joinder allowed without one person
being the leader of the joinder list.
Because joinder list, to me, means everybody is one list. So how you got three different people? How you got three different people? A joinder list of necessity must mean one list. And what I think they did should not have been, but there are certainly other persons who are eminently qualified.
You have just now advised them on what to do. So we're not going to join the list. The list is, the people who join is going to have one leader of the list, so that leader of the list could recall. So I hope Anu and them are are listening.
I don't want to give them. I don't want to give them a solution.
You just give them.
Yeah, but it'll become interesting who trusts who.
But you know, but do you know now, when they listen to this, you're not going to have 3 leaders of the list anymore. So you've solved it for them.
But I thought the solution was obvious. I think anybody who
would I be correct to say it's the first time we've had join the list in election? To your knowledge, Freddie.
I know there was no. Well, let me go again. I haven't, as Justice Chang would say, laid eyes on it. But I was told there was a party called
Gump.
Not Paul Tennessee's party. There was another party with somebody who Paul Tennessee. This was at the time when before GARD was formed.
Djibouti, maybe.
There were about 6 parties, and there were 2 of them who didn't join the list, but they still amounted to nothing.
But
meaning,
but they didn't get they didn't come up. It didn't come up to 5,000.
No, even with the join that they
I think it was the Eagle has landed that guy.
Giborde, no?
Yeah.
Giborde. I don't know who the people were, but I am told the person who knows is Paul Tennessee because he was friends with them and didn't join. But I don't know if it's true.
The operator said we got to go. Could we have you back here as the campaign stretches out?
Oh, sure.
Because I like you flowed evocatively in your last appearance on this program with David Hines. You were very, very articulate about what this man stands for. Now his party will enter the election in a coalition with the PNC. So we're gonna have you back on your take on that kind of configuration. Sanjeev,
this would be the best one,
and you'll be on the election trail. We'll see you on platform.
Oh yeah, well, that I'm expected to be. We'll see to what extent.
But how in these interviews we're gonna have you back soon? What is operator? Just bear up with me. We're gonna have you back here in a month or 6 weeks. Can we ask you, as a politician on the campaign trail, to speak about how you think of the chances of T. Mohamed on the campaign trail? Could we ask you?
Of course.
Could we ask you that question?
Yes, I don't think
there wouldn't be a conflict of interest.
No.
And she wants to pursue.
Like every citizen, I have an opinion. I don't have.
Sanjeev, it's always nice to have you. Thanks for being with us.
Sure.
Thanks for being with us. This was the Freddie Kissoon Show, and Sanjeev Datadin waxed lyrical on many, many issues that you will find interesting. The one that you will find interesting is for those who are listening and contesting the election. He has solved the problem of the jungle list, so there'll be no more Asha Kissoon incident. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
May God be with you.